Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Dominik Stanecki. Dominik, excited to have you on the show.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, I'm super excited to have you on and talk about all the awesome things that you're doing. And of course, before we do that, I want to read a little bit more about Dominik so you can hear about some of those awesome things. And Dominik is in the C-suite at 300 Devs, one of Poland's leading software houses and digital tool developers, a company that is responsible for mapping and developing some of Poland's most important platforms and applications. As a president of sales and marketing, he has taken the company international, building a portfolio of clients and partners in the US, UK, and Australia. He is an entrepreneur who runs 3 businesses and is a Timeionaire, a person who has time for everything. This life project aims to give people back the balance in their lives and to redefine the definition of success. Dominik is an avid traveler who has visited over 40 countries and is very interested in technology, AI, robotics, as well as MBTI typology, energy, and esoteric subjects. He has been in sales and marketing for over 25 years and has coached and mentored hundreds of entrepreneurs, business owners over the last 15. He is a natural leader who has built businesses and wealth to them that have destroyed by mistakes, greed, and ego, and to then rebuild his life from zero and become the Timeionaire that he is today. And I had a great conversation when I first connected with Dominik. He's done so many awesome things. I love his acronym that I was reading about and we talked about a little bit, where he discovered about IDHT, I don't have time syndrome. And that's a social disease that is responsible for much of the happiness and burnout in today's world. But more than anything else, I know I touched on it a little bit and we talked a little bit before we jumped in. His life mission, he said his all-in project is actually all around Timeionaire. So I'm sure we're going to delve down deeper into there. So Dominik, excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Sure am. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get it started then. So to kind of kick everything off, I know I rewinded the clock a little bit, but let's do that and hear a little bit more on how you got started. What I call your CEO story.
All right. Well, I guess where did I start? Life just takes you in different places, and sometimes you plan it or your parents plan it for you. Yes, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor like we were. And sometimes, you just go with entropy and you just go with the flow and it just all comes together, kind of like Slumdog Millionaire. It's like the best kind of metaphor. I kind of feel like my life is in a way like that. I was born in Europe, but I grew up in North America, grew up in Vancouver, BC. And after high school, I didn't go to university or college. I went straight into business. I went straight into sales. I started off as a telemarketer. I was hitting the phones at a call center in Vancouver. This was like a real estate development company. They were responsible for building and developing golf courses and ski resorts across North America. And the first thing I was selling was like timeshare stuff, mini vacations. And it was amazing. That is the foundation on really what I've built all my businesses on, is that just grinding the dialer, just not being afraid to speak to anyone about anything, anytime. I think that is one of the foundations when I work with people. And now working with people is different because you want to base on personality types, right? If I'm coaching is different than mentoring, and we can talk about that later. But going back to my story, telemarketing was amazing because you had to make hundreds of phone calls every single day, speaking to people that did not want to talk to you, pitching them something that they didn't necessarily need, and then convincing them in such a way that they had to even give you a credit card over the phone. And you had to do that over and over and over again and hit certain KPIs. So, I mean, if you repeat something every single day and you're putting your energy into it, you just naturally become good at it. That's like one of the philosophies in life, right? And I became really good at that. I moved on very quickly to become like a sales coach, where I was training new employees. Then I became a supervisor, and then I even became a manager. I was managing a huge call center of people. After that, I got into selling tech. So that's really where another piece of the puzzle came in, and I learned about technology. This was a really interesting story. I used to train martial arts when I was young, and that's really part of how I am today as well, is the discipline and the fundamentals that I learned through martial arts. We can add that another piece of the puzzle as well. And my martial arts instructor was a very unique person. He was a visionary. He was an amazing person. He still is. And he, further than his martial arts school, he got into technology and he built a CRM to kind of manage the school, and he built a whole business out of that. And I started working for him, and that was awesome because we were in the martial arts industry, and this was like in the 90s when UFC first started booming. And we were focusing on the martial arts industry every single day. right? And it was awesome because I got the chance to speak with some of these, famous martial artists and UFC fighters. We got to go to, UFC fights and martial arts super shows in Vegas and London. And, you're young and you're passionate about something and you realize this is what I should be doing.
Mm.
But at the same time, being young and stupid and rich, you do tend to make some silly decisions. And my life it did go that way as well, partying too much and doing stuff you shouldn't have necessarily been doing. And it got out of hand. And that is where I realized that not only do I have certain skills, but I've got this little ego that is inside me that, wants to kind of take the spotlight and also, do what it takes just to get the fame and the fortune and stuff like that, no matter what it takes. And my ego for a while we'd have this back and forth fight, me trying to control it trying to destroy me back and forth. And it eventually got to the point where I just didn't want to, I just needed to change. And I'm a person that I like to make drastic changes. So I'm like, okay, that's it. I need to start fresh. So I bought a one-way ticket to Tokyo and I decided I'm going to move to Japan. Why? Love martial arts, love the Japanese culture. And I decided I want to start fresh there. So I moved there and I decided to teach English because why? Well, it seems like the right thing to do as a native speaker, right? Somebody that speaks English. It's super easy to find jobs over there. I had a cousin that was living over there and he was doing that for several years. So I went over there, but life in Japan is crazy. It's not a different planet. It's not a different country. It's a different planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like everything is completely upside down, right? And you get culture shock. I travel a lot, but Japan is one of those places where you can really feel the difference between your culture and everything else. So I was there for a while, and then I came to Europe. I moved back to Poland, where I'm living right now. And my first business that I opened up was a language school. Because once again, having that skill of speaking English, realizing that everybody here, if you do speak English, you're like a god, and everybody just wants to throw money at you just for you to talk to them, right? So it's like, why not? So I did that for a while. And that was my first business, and I realized that I was quite good at that just because of my natural abilities to teach and to lead from what I learned in business and my personality type once again. And then I realized that my students really enjoyed their lessons to the point where I wasn't just teaching them English, I was helping them solve life problems. And I remember one time I had a friend and she was setting up like a fair. It was like a fair or a convention, and she wanted to invite me. And she goes, "Hey, Dominik, if you want, you can come and you can set up a booth and promote yourself as the native speaker English teacher." And I'm like, you know what? I'll come, but I don't want to come as an English teacher. I want to reinvent myself a little bit. And she goes, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, for the last couple of years, I've been pretty much coaching and mentoring people without like directly. I'm like, I want to jump into that. I feel like I've had the practice and I want to move into that as well. So I'm like, well, when's this event? She's like, in 10 days. I'm like, okay. So I had 10 days to reinvent myself. I'm like, okay, make the business cards, get the roll up going on, mentally prepare yourself. You're no longer an English teacher. You're now a coach and a mentor. You've been doing this anyways. Now just name it and go with it. And during that event, I met two people that opened up doors for me that then allowed me to move into motivational speaking. They helped me get some key clients. And this was kind of my second business that I started. It was the first one was education, language school. Then we got into personal development, which was a combination of coaching, mentoring, business strategy, and sales, which I naturally have been doing my entire life. And that went really, really well, especially I could do it in Polish or I can do it in English, right? I was bilingual and I could charge more for doing it in English because once again, I could tie in the English with it. And I'm just constantly, when I was here, I was like, Jesus, I'm like, there's so many opportunities. So, I built up a entire network of clients over the years and did that. But then after a while, I kind of started getting burnt out a little bit. In the meantime, doing lots of traveling. And really that's where I find that the passion in life is just visiting different cultures and seeing different ways that people live around the world. So I got kind of burnt out from teaching English actively. So I made it more of a passive business. And I continued to do the mentoring and the coaching and the business strategy. And then I met a client of mine, and he came for a completely different topic. And we became friends. And he told me that he's just recently bought a software house, and he's thinking of the software house was in the red, and he was trying to pull it into black, and he wanted to take the business international too. And he needed somebody that, number one, could speak English perfectly and could sell. And he's like, well, boom, I found my guy.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, hold on a second. I'm like, sales, English, and technology. I'm like, three things that I love the most. I'm like, this is destiny.
Mhm.
And him and I got together, and I started to I decided to join 300 Devs, and 300 Devs is the software house, which I'm a C-suite at, and I have a position of president of sales and marketing. So my job is to take the brand international, and I'll tell you a little bit about the company because the story is quite interesting, and I think everybody would enjoy getting the background on it. So the company's been in business for about 14 years, but about 4 years ago, it was bought out and rebranded. So 300 Devs is a 4-year-old brand, but the company and the staff is much older. And 300 Devs, actually, we've gone through a lot of things. Like I said, we started in the red, now we're in the black. We're doing really well, but the way to get there was long and tedious. And in the meantime, we managed to land some amazing clients and some projects. So I'll tell you about maybe four that are really key for us. The first one was we built out the entire logistics system for the Polish Post. So the Polish Post, the back end, was built by our developers and our company. And we also built an administrative system for the Roman Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church in Europe, Europe's a little bit older than North America, right?
Just a
If you're
little bit,
talking
right?
hundreds, thousands of years. So imagine the church keeping the records for so long of all the marriage, birth, death certificates. And they got out of hand and they needed a way to kind of, digitize this. So they contacted us and we made them a platform to be able to digitize all those records and have everything automated and digitized. So over 1.5 million users. That was pretty cool. But my
Nice.
favorite project came during COVID when we were all locked down, including the kids. The government contacted all the major software houses and ran a tender. And we were fortunate enough to win this tender. And we had to show very quickly how, as a team, we could come together and build a web-based application where the children could continue their education online. So that
Nice.
was one of my favorite projects. And I've been taking the company and the brand international. So I'm always traveling around the world, and I'm working with building partnerships and focusing on key clients and partners. And that's our strategy: primary markets, UK, US, Australia. And yeah, I guess, in a nutshell, a quick, I don't know, what was that, maybe 5 minutes? That's kind of a life story. We can start with that. That's a good start, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I truly appreciate that, and especially hearing your journey. I don't know if you ever heard the Steve Jobs commencement speech where he says sometimes we can only arrange the dots by looking backwards, and kind of
Right.
hearing your journey and hearing how each of the things are, supportive of one another and how you continue to kind of build on that. It kind of gave me chills and shades of that of how sometimes when we go through the journey of life and business and everything in between, we don't realize that those things are not in silos. They all are interconnected and help support one another.
Absolutely.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So I want to hear a little bit more on how you guys are serving clients. I know you talked about some of the projects, but would love to hear a little bit more on how that process works and a little bit more of what I like to call your secret sauce, which could be for you, the business, or a combination of both, and what sets you apart and makes you unique.
Right. Start with the low hanging fruit if you can. And obviously working off referrals and things. But internationally, we had to start from scratch, like no clients, no reputation, nothing. So it's like, well, what can I do? And I always like to think outside the box. I'm all about growth hacking. I am, once again, if we talk about personality type, I've been using this MBTI system for 10 years now, I think, and I use it every single day of my life. I might not remember your name, but I'll remember your personality type, right? And that's so important for me because most of the mistakes that people make come from miscommunication. We're just speaking a language that not everybody understands. And if we can learn to speak other people's languages, and I'm not talking actual languages, I'm talking the way that they process information,
Right.
then it just completely changes the game. So, why am I speaking about this? Because what I decided to do is I decided, okay, I could grind the dialer, but that's not the right way to do it. I could hire a bunch of, cold callers. We could do mailing campaigns and do stuff like that. And okay, we can try that. But I'm like, let's just join. Let's piggyback here. Let's make our life easier. I'm all about easy, right? I'm all about keeping it simple. So we joined the BNI network, the Business Network International. Why? Because it's already established. You join it. It's yes, you can say it's a club. Some say it's a cult. It is what it is. It's a place where you have hundreds of thousands of people around the world. that pay a due to connect with each other, to do business with each other. And if you can leverage that properly, you will have jumped from dealing with cold leads. Automatically, everybody's warm. And that's how I started. And that was the foundation on which we really, really built our business. And BNI was a great head start. Thanks to it, I managed to meet a lot of key people, partners. I still use it to today. I'm very active. We're part of an online group here in Poland. I travel a lot, so it's convenient for me because we meet primarily online. And so many capabilities, groups all over the world. And I've yet to have somebody tell me to F off when I call or contact them. Everybody's happy to speak with you. You know, they're warm, they're friendly, and this is all over the world, especially if I'm contacting them from Poland. They're like, from Poland? What are you doing here? Or I join a group, you know, live, like somewhere halfway across the world, and right away they're like interested in you and they want to hear you. So I think that's one of the key kind of things that I did. Once again, just keeping it simple and starting with something that's already established.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and any kind of indirectly, I started my business from BNI, so I'm a big, huge proponent of BNI. But indirectly, I think even we got connected through someone
Yeah,
who
we
was in a
did. Yeah,
BNI. So it's crazy
yeah,
how
yeah,
all
yeah,
those relationships
yeah,
start to happen.
yeah. Exactly.
Perfect. So, how did you come up with this concept of Timeionaire? Could you take us through a little bit more on it? I don't know if that came from that burnout and everything you kind of mentioned before. Does that what kind of planted the seeds towards you coming to this like realization and understanding?
A little bit. I think it was a combination of many things. It was just it came at the right time, but I think it was my destiny. It came to me as because from all the different companies that I run, this is not a company yet. It is a project. It's a work in progress. It's my life project. People ask me, when are you going to finish? I go, when the final dot goes on the last sentence, man. I have no idea because I don't have a deadline. I don't have any investors, and I I'm still learning things about this philosophy and this process that I have still yet to figure out. And I love it. I love the process. I don't want to finish it. It's like when you know it's one of those things that you
Yeah.
don't want to finish.
Mhm.
I will eventually, and I am going to. I have plans for it, big plans for it. But where did it come about? I think it came about with a combination of a little bit of burnout, also reaching an enough point in life, I guess, financially, where money turns. You then start to realize after the greed factor in us, because we're animals, we're like, more, give me more. I don't want to lose, but give me more of everything. So once you get to a level of enough, which most people, if they don't name it, they'll never get there because it's sick and it's a never ending story of and then you're bound to lose something, whether it's your relationships, your health, or your sanity. So it was a combination of that, and then I guess added to that some more esoteric things connected with me connecting with the universe, with me connecting with my source of information. Now, there's two types of people, and there's gonna be some listeners that go, there's gonna go, oh my God, what's this guy gonna say? And other ones go, oh man, he's losing me, he's starting to go crazy. And guess what? They're both right because there's two types of people. Either you're an S type, meaning you're pragmatic, sensoric, you only trust what you see, or
Mhm.
you're an N type, an intuitive, abstract minded type. So, right now for the S's, I'm sorry, but I am going to go N because this is part of my journey. And just so you guys know that if you're speaking with somebody that seems like they're from space, they're just another type, they're different than you. And instead of saying this person's wacko or weird, just learning to understand what that means because it's another processor. If we're talking technology, it's another operating system. It's like saying, iOS is weird. It's not Windows. Well, it's not Windows, right? You got even the buttons are on the different sides. So when you learn to understand personalities, that's what we get to. So for me, I'm very deep on energy. Okay, I've
Mhm.
learned some things during my life that are like the secrets in life, things that are literally on the borderline of magic. And those who get it, they know. Those who don't, well, hey, right? And it was a combination of that. And just one day, the universe just sends me the word Timeionaire, and I'm like, the first thing I'm like, I check it. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, it. You know how you get ideas and you're checking, like, ah, shit, somebody's already done that, right?
Yes.
Well, this was one of those things where you check, you recheck, and you're like, oh my God, did I just come up with something new? Like, nah, like me, I just came up with something that didn't exist, right? And then I'm like, why hasn't anybody stumbled upon this? I'm like, we got the word millionaire, we got the word billionaire, everybody's obsessed with those, and but time. And I was a timeionaire. I reached a level in my life where I was financially good. I had my life in order somewhat. And then at the same time, I started to realize, I had also some loss in my family. I had this one year where I had like three people go in one year.
Mm.
And that was very important as well, because when you lose people close to you, you start to realize how precious life is. And it was just everything came together at that right moment. And the universe gave me that word because I was looking for a word to call myself. And then, and somebody's like, well, yeah, you're millionaire, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I'm like, I'm looking for something more interesting. And I'm like, Timeionaire, right? And
Mm.
then I also created the version in Polish too, Czcioner, because czas in Polish means time. And I've
Mm.
trademarked those. So actually I own the words, not just the graphics behind them, but the actual words themselves in various categories. And yeah, that's kind of where it stemmed from. And I fell in love with it right away because I'm like, first I did it for me. I'm like, I am a timeionaire. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, I love my life. I have all these things happening, yet I always have time for those things that are important for me, for my hobby, for my health, for all those things. And that's kind of where it started. And it really just stemmed from there. It
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you breaking down like how that came about and what that looks like because I think, like you said, and even like I read, so many times we're saying I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, and I think sometimes we don't understand like how I think defeating, I don't know if that's the right word. It can be to utter that and even to on a deeper level to probably believe that, but to start to, I think, have that, I don't know if Timeionaire philosophy or perspective or understanding allows you to, I think, look at the world and as an opportunity, but also as with the zest, the zeal, and the excitement that it sounds like you have as well.
Yeah, and then you also start looking at time as a currency that's much more valuable than money, because money
Mm.
comes and goes. You can bankrupt and then you can become a millionaire again. But time, every second that ticks, man, is just, you're just losing it. You can buy time, and I buy time weekly. I buy around like 15 hours a week, and that's paying for various services like cleaning and like, gardening and stuff that needs to be done, but should not be done by you. Most people say they don't have
Mm.
time because they're doing things that they should not be doing that need to be done, but they don't have to be done by them. But because of their pride or ego, or because they don't believe in their future and their opportunities, they're like, no, like, oh, what, I should pay somebody to do these things. Yes, of course you should, because you're freeing up energy and time. Time in itself sorry, like, time is not money. It's not. Time plus energy is money. If you have no
Mm.
energy, then time in itself is useless, right? It's the combination of those two. That's my, Einstein had his E equals MC square.
Mhm.
Mine is T plus E equals S. It's time plus energy equals success, right?
Mhm.
And that's the philosophy. You have those two things. Whatever you invest those two things in, you're going to see success, right? And then the other way around too. I mean, if you tell yourself all the time, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, that's psychosomatic, right? And that just like tell yourself, I've got cancer, I've got cancer, I've got cancer, and see what happens, right? So if everybody's saying I don't have time, I don't have time, well, actually, what planet are you from? Because the last time I checked, everybody on Earth's got 24 hours. No matter where you are or on this planet, or how rich or poor, young, old, or fat, slim, we all share that 24 hours. So how can you not have what we all have? Right? It's
Yeah.
not about I don't have time. It's just that time and money. These are tools that most people just don't know how to use. Right?
Mhm.
Everybody wants them, but it's what they use the worst. And that's the whole gimmick with it. And during this, during my journey of discovering and kind of defining Timeionaire and really digging into it and thinking, how can I actually turn this into not a business and not a money-making scheme? Because I don't need that anymore. Like this, I'm past that. I'm now at a level where I want to do something of value and give back and stuff like this. And as doing research for the book that I'm writing on this, I discovered a social disease just by freak accident. And I was also shocked that I discovered it. And I named it, like you said before, IDHT syndrome, for I don't have time syndrome. And if you listen, you can hear it everywhere. And that's the real pandemic that's happening
Mm.
right now.
Yeah, which is why I love everything that you're doing, and it sounds like even like the CEO hacks that you talked about is making sure that you, first of all, I think, which is like it's like an app, a book, or even a habit that makes you more effective and efficient. But it sounds like with being a time, you start to first of all value your time, but then also see like there's other ways to go about doing life, doing business, doing all of those things. And I think so many times that I don't know if you've had that experience where we get stuck in doing things the way that sometimes we've been taught, sometimes the things we've been doing over and over again. We don't realize that we can do things in a different way. And we can actually put that energy someplace else.
It's like that horse with the blinders on, right?
Yeah.
You're stuck in a rut and you're just going one direction. But here's the thing, I'm always a brutally honest person. I got to tell a lot of people this. Some of you out there, that's your mission, is just to be that bot.
Mm,
Like, some people must accept the fact that they're not everybody's an achiever. Some people out there, their role is to be the auxiliary helper,
mm,
right? And there's a certain temperament of person who is designed to be the backbone of society. And there are always unique circumstances and breakout individuals, but most of them are here to be supporting actors. They're to play a supporting role. You must learn your role. And it's one of those lotteries of life. We're not all born with certain things. I mean, we are born with all certain traits and abilities, but it's not like you're born into it. There's some that you can learn, but there's some things that you just cannot teach a certain person. You can pretend and you can try, but they're going against their natural cognitive like stack. You know what I mean? And that's really where the typology aspect of it comes into play. Is once you realize who you are, or I'll use Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche has this cool quote. He goes, "Become who you are."
mm.
And I love that because most people don't know who they are and they're trying to become someone else. And they're banging their heads against the wall because they're following someone else, but that someone else, it's like, I don't know, it's like a Honda is trying to be a Ferrari, man. Like, you can only soup up
Mhm.
a Honda so much. It's not going to be a Ferrari or a Lambo. You can pretend, but it's not, and it won't
Yeah.
be. It can try to be, but it won't be. And that's, I think a lot of people are trying to do that. And yet, if you just accept, but that's the challenge too, is a lot of people are not willing to accept who they are. And then that's where it gets tough. But if you're able to accept your role in society, then you can then be a better part of society. And then you actually will be happier in the long run. But you have to accept that fact. And that's, some people, it's very hard for them to do that.
Yeah, which is why I love that you're bringing that to light, and of course having those conversations because again, I often say if you run your own race, you can't lose. And I think so many times when we're running our race, we start to look to the side and say, "Hey, I want to be like the Ferrari or the Honda, or I want to be like this person or that person," and not being true to who you are. Because for one, that allows you to appreciate yourself, but I think on a deeper level, it allows you to impact society and the world in a way that only you can, and society needs you to do. So when we start to lean and hone into that, understand that, and start to put energy behind that and execute on that, then that's when really phenomenal things I think can happen for the world overall.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Would you consider to be like what I would call a CEO nugget, a little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice? I like to say it might be something you would tell your favorite client, or if you were hopping to a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
You mean about like what I've learned about business? Can you maybe repeat that question one more time? I want to make sure I
Yeah.
understand it well.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you consider like the advice that you give about making sure that you're honing in on who you are and that
Mhm.
understanding, would you consider that to be like your CEO nugget, the thing that you would tell your younger business self or potentially your favorite business client, or would it be something else that you would recommend?
There are many. I have a list, but that one's one of the top ones because it's responsible for everything else. I've got a daughter, and I wish she's young, and I'm teaching her slowly to understand this because if I learned this when I was like 30,
Mhm.
and if I had known this when I was 18, well, and then here's the question: it's like, well, that would be the butterfly effect. Maybe it would have made you better, but maybe it wouldn't have. And it's like, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
But if we can, I think that if I could live my life the way I did, plus that extra knowledge, it would. But then I can also go back and say, it's all the stuff, all my failures that made me who I am today. That's why these questions of like, well, when you would you go back, what would you say? I'm like, it's like, you remember that Simpsons episode when Homer
Yeah.
goes back in time? He's got
Yeah.
that time machine, and then he's like doesn't want to touch anything because like he just swapped a mosquito, and then that one
It
mosquito
changed.
like
Yeah.
it
It changed the
changed
whole world.
everything.
Yeah.
And then he goes back again, and then like he's like, he like squishes a whole bunch of stuff. And he's like, oh man,
Not
like
again. Yes,
this
I
one's
do.
gonna suck. So that's kind of how I feel about that question of what would you do when you go back in time. I would stand there and not budge and just hope to come back because I love who I I am now.
Mm.
And I know if I changed a little microscopic thing back in time, I could be completely different. Now, would that be better or worse? I don't know. I don't want to take that. I don't want to roll the dice on that one. You know what I mean? But go back to the question. Yeah, I'm going to say MBTI is the number one thing that I suggest. I mean, if I'm hiring, I'm not hiring people. I'm hiring a personality type. So I'm looking, what is the position? What is the best suited type for this position? One or two or maximum three types. Usually it's two. And then what I'm doing is I'm writing an advertisement that speaks the language of that speaks to those types. And then we're getting applications coming in, CVs, resumes that we call them in the US, and then we're filtering through, inviting people for interviews that fit the personality type and go through a filtering process of their resume, meeting with those people that fit our criteria. And then I want to get to know who you are. Let's talk about you and tell me about your experience and tell me about your screw ups and tell me all about blah, 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 blah. But I don't want to waste my time in getting to know you in this regard if you don't fit a certain criteria. Most companies, they'll be like, come on in based on the resume. And then it's like, hit or miss,
Right.
right? I've insanity, repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So, I mean, how many times can you hire somebody and realize they're not right and realize you're doing it the wrong way? So the question is, what's a better way? And this is just a better way. Is it the right way? Maybe no, maybe yes. For me, it's a good way, and that's what I do. So I always tell people, like even when I'm coaching or mentoring, I'm like, number one, learn typology.
Mm. Could you tell us, I guess, a little bit about what MBTI is for people that aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, so it's a system that is based off of Jungian psychology, and it's a basically all the systems like Enneagram, Gallup, Big Five, all of them. Those are systems that are made off of the human brain and the way that our brains are, the differences between us. So the MBTI system is, in my opinion, the easiest one, but it's extremely deep and you can go down a rabbit hole. But also the leading spy agencies use MBTI, and that tells you something as well. I actually took a year and a half, maybe even 2 years off, just to see if there's anything as good or better. And I learned all the other systems, and I decided, no, I'm going to go back to that one. That one has proven itself very, very well. So that's what it is. It's a personality assessment, and that's what it is.
Nice. I appreciate you breaking that down so much. To me, like that also aligns with what we've been talking about, where if you run your own race, you can't lose. And I think so many times we don't understand what our race is, and on a deeper level, probably even understand like who we are, our personality, all those things, the skills, the talents, all those things. And I feel like that's so powerful, for us as individuals. But as you said so well, it's also so powerful for organizations to say, okay, this person is who is going to help to support our organization to crush these goals or get to wherever we need to be. But rather than saying, okay, we just want you to be able to be a good interviewee, we're actually going to look for the people that will help support that and understand whose race is going to help support all of our races so that we can all ultimately win.
Yeah. And because we're working as a team, and a team it has to be made up of components and parts that fit together, right? That go well. And if it is, then you're building a long lasting business. You're building a foundational business that you build off of. And yes, you're going to go through trial and error. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to blah, blah, blah. You're going to go through that stuff, but it's going to be different because you're going to understand the pieces. They're going to click together better. If everybody understands each other as well, the communication, and that's the keys too, is the communication, right? Who am I speaking with? What's their language? How to best get my message across to them? If there's a problem, why? How are they perceiving this? What's the best way to put out the fire?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that part about the language as well, too, and understanding that we don't all speak the same quote unquote language per se,
Mm-hmm.
aren't the same way that we approach life and to go through those aspects. So absolutely appreciate that. So now I want to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So Dominic, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Taking responsibility for the things that go wrong, and being a leader, right? Being an actual leader, not just a boss, but being a leader, having a vision, and making difficult choices. Having those conversations that you might not necessarily want to have, at times that might not be right, with people who are important, about topics that are challenging. And that's the combination of that is what I call a CEO. It's somebody who can solve problems. It's somebody who can sell. It's somebody who can motivate. It's someone who can criticize. It is someone who is knowledgeable in vast areas of business, or if not, be able to build a team that complements their weaknesses. And knowing also who you are too and how you fit in the puzzle. And being a good CEO also means making sure that your ego is in check. Because
Mhm.
if not, because you're responsible for the lives of many people. It's like you're the driver and you're going down the freeway and you're ripping, man. You're going fast. You're speeding, and if something goes wrong, people's lives are at jeopardy, and it's a lot of responsibility. And a lot of people think, oh yeah, I'm going to be a CEO. I just like CEO on my LinkedIn, and I'm a CEO now, right? It's like, well, we'll see when the first major crisis comes, if you really are a CEO, right? How are you going to handle it, right? Who are you going to blame, right? Who are you going to pay? Where are you going to throw money, right? Where are you going to put money to help solve this problem? Are you going to be cheap and try to save it? Or are you going to realize? Also realizing when you've lost a battle, not to double down and put money into something that is sinking. Know when to assess risk, be able to predict certain things. So either be strategic or tactical or both. So it's multifaceted. It's a million things, right? It's everything.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I love the holistic kind of definition and perspectives you provided, but I really kind of keyed in on that first word that you said, the responsibility, because I feel like that creates such a foundation. Because as you start to learn about yourself, as you said so well, you start to learn about your team, learn about the mission and vision and goals and all the things you want to accomplish. You start to have people on your team. It doesn't become just something that you do; it becomes a responsibility for you to be able to wield our superpowers, our things that kind of make us unique in such a great way to not only benefit us but benefit the organization, the investors, the team. All there's so many things that are involved, and I think once you start to kind of understand that, the gravity of it, the importance of it, you start to realize that the decisions that you make, decisions that you don't make, and everything in between start to become more and more important.
Yeah. It's all about choices. You just learn that your every day is just filled with choices, right? And then also you got to build a system and you have to have processes that work, right?
Mhm.
And complement really who you are, right? Make sure that whatever you're weak in, because everybody, I might be amazing in something, but that just means I'm going to be completely weak in something else. And whatever I'm weak in, I have to make sure that I have somebody who's extremely strong in that, and they're going to be weak in something else. And we're just going to keep on doing that until I've got the right people in the right places, and we're all, when you put us together, that's when the lights come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why that word you said, earlier, ego, is such a big thing, because sometimes you have to have the ego to believe that you can do something great, but also have the ego to realize you don't do everything great. And you have to find the team to be able to kind of support you in terms of doing that.
Definitely.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, Dominic, truly appreciate that definition. And of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I want to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get a hold of you, find about all the awesome things you are working on.
Awesome. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I don't use other social media. I have some social media that's other people are running for me, but one of the reasons I've got lots of time is I have said no to all of the social media except for LinkedIn. It's my digital CV. And let's see, what kind of knowledge would I like to pass on? Well, primarily this. I do a lot of traveling. If somebody wants to connect with me, next week I'm in London at the tech show. Last 2 weeks ago, I was in Asia on business. So I'm all over the place. If you guys want to touch base with me, especially if you're in tech or if you are interested in any of the services that I was talking about today. Also, 300 Devs, we are one of the leading software houses and digital tool developers. So if you guys do need any kind of products or services in the digital world, definitely contact us. That's the business that I'm most involved in at the moment. It's the one that's taking up most of my time and energy right now. The one I'm most passionate about, other than Timeionaire, of course. But one's a business, one's a project. So yeah. So look out. Also on YouTube, you can find us at 300 Devs as well. We post. We have a bunch of videos on there. Everything from our product videos to all of our business ventures and adventures around the world. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube and check me out on LinkedIn.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And to make it even easier, of course, we're going to have the links and information in the show notes as well, too, so that everybody can follow up, subscribe, and find out about where you are in the world and all the awesome things that you're doing. So, Dominik, truly appreciate you. Again, appreciate all the awesome things that you're doing. I think so many times we don't realize that we have the opportunity to make choices to help to increase the value of time and how we're using that time. So, thank you so much for doing that and providing us so many different perspectives and great advice and all the things that you've been able to do today. So, I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day, my friend.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love doing this because every time I'm asked a question, it makes me think about what I really think about a topic. And the more I do these, it's like, you're refining your own ideas and your knowledge. You're listening to your own thoughts and seeing, do I still agree with what I said earlier, right? Or did I change my mind? So
Yeah.
thanks again for that, letting me or being a soundboard here for me as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's a journey, right?
Yeah, for sure.